What's up, everybody? I'm Skull.
I'm Zombie Cat.
And this is the Horror Den. Happy Halloween! And also, happy last day of Horror Havoc.
That's not happy.
Well, hey, you know, we have been on the job all month.
Yeah.
Giving more content than we have since we started. And, you know, while... You know, it's been a fun experience. It's been stressful. You know,
definitely.
I have so much more respect for creators now that I've watched forever that post daily. I don't know how they do it.
Even us, when we were outside of October recording one video a week, it was still just like, man. Yeah. But now that we're doing so many, it's like, Jesus Christ.
But we are excited to say that today we are covering Hellfest.
Great movie.
Zombie Cat over here actually showed me this movie shortly after it came out, but I've watched it periodically since, and so this is kind of a movie that we share a love for, and it is a slasher movie, which is our favorite genre, so we're going to finish out the Halloween season with a slasher movie.
It's also pretty cool because this movie was made in our neck of the woods. It was filmed at Six Flags Whitewater, I believe, for the most part, and I'm pretty sure Netherworld provided a fair share of props and animatronics for this movie.
Right.
So it's in our neck of the woods of where this movie was made, which is pretty cool.
So just a forewarning, you know, spoilers ahead for Hellfest. But there's not a lot of subtlety in this movie, so this breakdown will probably be shorter than our other videos.
Yeah.
But we're going to be
straightforward.
We're going to be nerding out a little bit. So without further ado, let's just dive right on into it.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do.
So our story begins with this girl she's running through a haunted house. And she encounters this dude wearing a red devil mask. Yeah. And she is like, oh my God, you're the guy that's been following me around all night. Like, what do you want? And then he kills her. I mean, straight out the gate, he stabs her in the stomach and then strings her up on a noose.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. He hangs her there like a Halloween decoration because they're in a room of hanging bodies.
Right.
Or props, and they didn't even notice it until like 3 days later.
Because of the smell.
Yeah. It was like, ooh.
That's established like when we jump forward.
Yeah.
So we meet our cast of characters. I'm going to be honest, I'm terrible with...
They are character 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Look, they all have names and they are important, you know, but when it comes to slasher movies, you're not here to hear the names. You don't care about the character depth. That's not what the character score is not going to be high. It's just letting you know.
This movie is a very, very traditional slasher, and I feel like it embraces that in a good way.
And also, it is one of the few slasher movies that doesn't have a sequel, and I'm so glad it doesn't. I don't think it needs one.
Would I be offended if they made one? Probably not.
No.
It's like...
I don't think that they could capture the same energy twice.
Yeah.
I think that it would fall a little short.
So essentially, what we're working with here is a slasher film that takes place inside of a Hollywood Horror Nights kind of deal.
Yeah, basically to a T. There's this group of like college age friends, one of which, the main character, has come back from college to go on this visit to Hellfest with them, which is basically this 3-tiered haunted amusement park where they have the normal park, and then they have the Deadlands, and then they have Hell. So much like other horror houses around here where it's like, you know, there's multiple stories involved. It increases in difficulty. It's the same kind of concept. So they all go as a group. She has a love interest. Literally there's a love interest for every female character. Yeah. Something I will say about this movie is that, I mean, we always have the final girl and stuff like that, but I feel like this movie, unlike a lot of other slasher movies, really just like captures what like we think of in slashers as like college age
very
girls.
stereotypical.
I will say this though, unlike a lot of slasher tropes, they don't really catapult off of like sex, drugs, and alcohol.
Yeah.
So they kind of break the mold a little bit in that way, but
A pinch.
a pinch. But we see these group of characters go to Hellfest, and they're just being themselves, and we see just off the cuff like this guy in a hoodie and steel-toed shoes walk through a metal detector, and it goes off. The shoes will let him pass, and then a little bit later we see this girl run into him and basically gives him crap for it, like, oh, you're so scary, I can get the fuck out of my way. And that comes up later. So they start going through these haunted houses. They're really cool, full of like really cool animatronics and just scenery pieces. But eventually they get to this one haunted house where they come into the end, and there is a schoolroom setting. And at this point, our main character has kind of like, okay, this isn't that serious. It's not that scary.
Yeah, she's starting to also get along with her love interest. They kind of also did this as like a setup for them two to get together.
Right. And we see, I think that before this, like, he was trying to win her a stuffed animal with the ring toss, and he was failing.
I don't think
miserably.
that had happened yet, because I think that's right before they go to the Deadlands.
Right.
They're like, come on.
Right. But anyway, so we see the same girl that gave that guy flack that was apparently working, but we know he wasn't working. She runs in, it's like, oh my God, he's after me. And she hides underneath this thing where there's like an arrow pointing down on the tarp, and the guy comes in, and the characters have seen this guy a little bit around already, and she was like, oh, you think you're so scary? And like she goes to step, and then he steps up, and he has a knife too, and he's like, hey, you're two in a character, dude. Your girl's over there hiding in a little thing. And so he goes over there and he pulls her out, and like she's like laying down, and he's holding her down, and he's just staring up at her with the knife raised, and she just says, just do it. And he does. And it's very real. They don't realize that it's real. They still think that it might still be a part of the thing, but it really unnerves this main character as the other girls leave, and they just have this like moment of staring off. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah, his mask is awesome too. I can't remember how he got his mask. It was I know he distracted something, and then he just slipped it off, but
yeah. But she leaves, and it was like, didn't it get a little real there at the end? And they were like, yeah, that was pretty intense. And then we see somebody else get stabbed on the street, and so it was like, maybe it was just a thing.
Yeah, they were using one of those like knives, retractable. Like,
but then we see him standing in the alleyway facing these group of girls, and yeah. And so then we fast forward a little bit, and the love interest is trying to do the ring toss, failing miserably trying to win her the stuffed animal. And so,
and I want to mention something. I'm not a drinker, but I would have to try one of the shots from this place, like the alcoholic shots. It's so funny. They have them in actual shots. You take it like a needle. I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, like a plunger, like a syringer.
Also kind of might be foreshadowing.
Oh yeah, it definitely is for one character. But also they decide to take photos in a photo booth, and it gets a little heated, a little make out sesh, and we see the pictures get printed, and we see the guy from earlier who stabbed the girl grab the photos and walk off as one of the friends is like chasing after him. We hear him humming from around a corner, and she gets freaked out and decides to leave. But he didn't get the stuffed animal, so the friends have all decided to move on to the Deadlands, which is like the next phase where they have to go through a ride to get there. There's only one way to get there, and then that's the only way to get to hell. So the rest of the group gets on the ride to go to the Deadlands. The love interest stays behind to go and try to finagle a stuffed animal. We see, the two couples that are remaining get on these it's literally like a 2-person cart. Yeah. And then our main character is alone in hers, and they go on the ride. It's really, I'm sure it'd be fun, but it kind of looks a little cheesy where it's like things popping out, and it's animatronics, but it's really cool. It's very Halloween-y vibes, which is why we picked this movie. And we see eventually the ride stops.
Yeah.
And
this is probably one of the best scares in the movie.
The red light starts going off like an emergency, and then we hear Tony Todd. He's appeared, and his voice comes over the intercom. It's like, we are experiencing technical issues. Don't try not to lose your head. It's really cool. It's really funny. And then down this corridor that's right to her right, we see the guy, or what we assume to be the guy, and he gets closer and closer.
Yeah, it's
and closer.
doing like the Doctor Who angel kind of thing, like he's moving from left to right while getting closer. It's really cool.
Right, and then eventually the lights go out, and so we hear her scream, and then the cart comes out as her friends are waiting on her, and they're like, what was that? And we see that the guy is just sitting.
It's pretty funny. He's like propped up, just like sitting there with her as the cart's moving forward.
And it comes to a stop, and it turns out that the people in the Deadlands, the scarers, they all look like the dude. And that's when...
I think they're like the people that are supposed to guide you to hell or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
I can't remember what they're called. It's like the Others or something.
Yeah, the
Because
Other.
I want to say that's what they call the killer in this movie, is the Other.
I'm sure. Even Tony Todd says the Other will guide you on your journey. But then we flash back to the love interest who is still on the upper side of the park, and he tries to bribe this guy, and he's like, "Nah, I'll lose my job." And then he sees somebody coming out of like this locker room area carrying a bunch of stuffed animals, and he decides to go in there and try to steal one. So he goes in there and he finds a stuffed animal, but he also finds our killer, and he doesn't think he's being serious. He's like, "Hey man, you're off stage, like stop taking your job so seriously." So he trips him up, and he has this like one of those I don't know what they're called, but you hit
it's like
the
a
hammer.
Harley Quinn hammer.
Yeah, you hit the thing, and the ball goes up and hits a bell. That's what he has. So he trips him up, and his head like hits at the bottom of it, and he takes the blunt.
He of course perfectly aligns.
Yeah, he takes the blunt end of it, and he hits him in the throat, which oh god, and he can't breathe.
He hits the bell though.
Yeah, and then he gets his head smashed by the hammer as the bell rings because he's a strong boy. So our first official main character death has occurred. Meanwhile, the people are in the Deadlands, but important fact, the killer now has the love interest's phone.
Yeah.
That's setting up for a really good scare later on.
Yeah.
So they're in the Deadlands, they're going through more haunted houses and such like that, and periodically this guy continues to show up. And eventually, this like alien creature like vomits.
Oh, it's so cool. It's like a freaking specific bug. What am I trying to think? It's very just insectish though.
Blood fly?
Yeah, that's what it is. But it spits like fake acid on her. I'm like, that's so cool. Really cool costume, but it's like shoots slime on her. It's like, ooh.
So she goes to the bathroom to wash that off, and her friend leaves her, and she goes to use the stall, and she texts her love interest, and we hear a beep coming from inside the bathroom.
Well, also, this is a good like character development moment. They're like, the main girl, she's apologizing to her best friend who's kind of been the one looking out for her besides the love interest. They were good close friends, and they agree that they're gonna go to Spain.
Go topless in Spain.
Yeah, like, so it was kind of like a sweet moment of, we're gonna go do something fun, like kind of rekindle this friendship essentially. And then she goes into the bathroom. That's when this happens.
She's using like a blow dryer. Before she goes into the stall, she's using a blow dryer.
Oh yeah, the blow dryer
to get
scene.
the like goo out of her hair. And we see our killer like looming right next to her, and he almost touches her. It's really creepy. And it's really effective, but he's gone. She goes to the stall, texts her love interest. We hear a beep coming from inside the bathroom. We don't think anything of it. She's probably like, coincidence. And then, she gets a response, and she texts back again, and we hear it again. And it's like, uh-oh. And then we see two steel-toed boots right at the front as the door starts shaking. And so she...
Yo, is somebody taking a shit in here?
we were joking the whole time about this is like every kid that ever had to use the bathroom at school. This happened. This really does happen. And so she crawled underneath the stalls all the way to the edge, and then we see the killer's hand reach over and grab her from over top. and there's like a struggle ensues, but eventually she gets free. She runs outside. They get a security guard to come in and look for the guy. It's not there, can't prove it, but the pictures of them are left on the floor.
But of course, the guy's just like, your boyfriend's playing a sick prank on you, so
right.
I can't arrest anybody for doing their job. It's like, welcome to Hellfest.
Welcome to Hellfest. He said the thing. But after that, she kind of calms down just a little bit. So then they decide to hit some more haunted houses.
It's because I think he's like, he went to get you a freaking stuffed animal.
Yeah, they tell her.
Because she was tripping. So,
but they go to more haunted houses. The guys go to this one called Your Worst Nightmare, and the girls go to Sleep Like a Baby.
Yeah.
Both are just as cool as we've previously mentioned. There's
the Worst Nightmare one's super cool. I like the idea of you get given a flashlight that interacts. Throughout the thing. That is terrifying. That would be so fun.
But I mean, I know we're not giving much detail, but there's not much detail to give other than what we've already said. The guys, they're going through their thing, and there's this really cool sequence where an animatronic train chases them down a hallway.
Yeah, like their flashlights turn off, and they're like, why the hell won't our things turn on? They get freaking jump scared by a train horn. That would make me just...
Oh, yeah.
I'd die on the spot.
But, there's these two separate paths, and they accidentally take them, and one of them makes it to the exit, and then we see the other one is in this really dark lit room where he encounters the killer with his flashlight. It's a really cool scare, and he gets a syringe through the eyeball and then plunge deeper, and it instantly kills him.
Brutal.
You see every second of it.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you just, the whole time you see it getting closer and closer and closer, like, oh god.
So our second main character has now fallen. The rest of the group is like, oh, he'll catch up. He probably just got lost in the maze or whatever. And so they go to like this welcome festival, which is when we get to see the legendary Tony Todd
being carried out on a badass like voodoo throne.
As he should be. As he fucking well should be.
One of my favorite actors / voice actors of all time.
But anyway, so the edgy punk rock girl, I guess is what we're gonna call her, but she had volunteered to take part in this, and it turns out in order to open the doors to hell, they have to sacrifice a virgin, which they have this really funny banter between her and Tony Todd, and they set her up in like a guillotine. And at this point, our main character sees the steel-toed boots on the executioner, and she's freaking out. She's getting stopped by security, right. And the guillotine happens, and it's a fake head. And Tony Todd just sells this performance so good. He's in the movie for so little, but oh my god, his presence is felt. And we see the curtain closes. She like lifts her head back up. It's like, that was fun. And she's talking to the executioner like, oh, sorry, that was my friend.
There's another guy who comes through too, and he's like, will you get her out? And he's like, yeah, I got her. He doesn't say that, but he just kind of gives a nod. But the other dude walks out, and then the other starts she's basically saying how fun it was, like you were saying. She's apologizing about her friend after she learned that this was all fake, but she was right, because the other proceeds to shove this girl forward and then like tighten down every single belt, and he's like lining up the guillotine because it's a real freaking blade, and
he drops it.
Yeah, he drops it, and it's nasty because it leaves like a gash in the back of her neck. It didn't go deep enough to do actual like decapitation, but it was deep enough where I was like, I just can't. I'm imagining a big ass paper cut on the back of my neck.
It hurts.
That disturbed me.
But somehow, while he's getting the blade reloaded to go again, because I think he was just gonna do it until her head fell off.
Yeah, I think that was the goal.
But she gets free, and a chase ensues. And he's, revealed who he actually is by the time that this has all happened. So she's freaking out, and her friends hear her running, and they run after her, and eventually he catches up, and he slices her across the face in front of everybody. and everybody's like, oh, like it's a performance. And then he stabs her, and like, you know, she's dead. He stabs her multiple times. And then this guy runs up and is like, whoa, 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 which is her love interest, and he immediately gets a knife to the chest. Just boom.
Her love interest was the one who got the needle in the eye.
Oh, well, the other guy then. Sorry. Like I said, it doesn't matter. He gets immediately stabbed, and then everybody starts running because they realize that this is, oh shit, you know.
Someone's stabbing him.
And we hear Tony Todd's voice, you know, like, you know, emergency, you know, we're closing out the park, find your nearest exit. We have our 2 remaining last girls, which are the best friends that are going to Spain together.
And in horror movie fashion, they do the stupidest thing they could possibly do. They think it's an exit when it literally says, welcome to hell, that we've been talking about through this entire movie.
They accidentally enter the last layer of this this amusement park, and a chase is basically from beginning to end this whole time. Something of note, he breaks off the exit doorknob, and they eventually get cornered in this room where there's just full of mannequins, which is really fucking creepy.
Yeah, it's a very creepy room.
She gets the best friend gets injured in the leg, and so she's basically being carried this whole time, and our main character disguises herself as one of the mannequins, and we see our killer, the other, enter. He opens up the secret passageway, trying to, I guess, lure them out, and eventually he picks one and he swings an axe at it, and that's when our main character comes out and proceeds to put the beat down with a mannequin arm. And my God, she had him right here. She could have finished it all.
There's twice, I think, this happens where it's like, you didn't have to stop.
No, just like in every other slasher movie. Why did you quit? Why didn't you just keep hitting until you know?
Because this dude is very human.
Yeah, he's
very
like
human.
uber human. But, you know, they knock him down kind of not unconscious, but enough to where they can get away. They run down the secret passage, making their way even further through hell. They find out about these the laser triggers to activate the rooms. They find a broom closet to hide in for a while, and basically at the end of this maze they ambush the killer, and the main character actually gets a stab off when he activates one of these traps, and it opens a secret door, and she's there and she says, just die, and stabs him. And you know, he's on the floor bleeding, and
she leaves.
Yeah, she leaves.
She could have kept stabbing him.
And so she, you know, they're making their way towards the exit when the lights come on and the cops come in, and they're here to save the day. And the only thing that we see is a pool of blood where our killer was, and he is no longer there. As we see our last 2 girls sitting on the steps of Welcome to Hell, and, you know, they're in blankets, and then we see a police officer approach and say, you know, I'm sorry, but we couldn't find him. And you're like, what do you mean? He was right there. And it's like, we're going to keep looking. And then we fade to black, and we see a car, like a minivan, rolling into a subdivision as we hear a radio playing where it's like just talking about 4 murders have been confirmed at Hellfest. And we see this car pull up, and we hear somebody get out, and we are in the middle of a shed as we see our killer, the unknown, enter into this shed as he approaches this like lockbox on the wall, and he opens it up, and it's full of Halloween masks, which
including the devil mask from the beginning of the movie, and trinkets.
Yep, and he puts the mask on a little hook, and he places the pictures that he stole, the other set, in the box, and closes it up before entering the house. And we see him looming over this little girl laying on the couch as he begins humming "Pop Goes the Weasel" as he has throughout this entire film. When the girl wakes up and looks at him, it's like, "Oh my God, Dad, you're home!" And you know, they kneel down and they're hugging, and she's like, "Oh, did you get me anything?" And he pulls out the stuffed animal that he got from the guy he killed. And that's the end of the movie. Yeah. Like I said, it's really straightforward. There's not a lot of fluff. It's straight to the point. I think this movie runs like an hour and 20 minutes, maybe. Yeah. So, you know, we're probably skipping over some really fun stuff, but at the same time, like, you know exactly what happens in this movie now. So, I mean, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the scoring.
I do have some minor, like, vocal gripes about this movie. It's like, there would be so many cameras in this park, it's not even funny.
Oh, I'm sure. But
and then also, it's Yeah, they have VIP passes, but there's like no lines for anything. They
Right.
just like get on it. Even if you got a VIP at like Universal or Disney, you're still waiting a good bit. So it's,
But, you know, it is what it is. Suspend your disbelief.
they just walk into a haunted house at one point. They're just like, oh, let's go in. It's like, where is everybody?
Yeah,
These
what's-
things would be jam packed.
Why did you buy a fast pass, basically?
It's like, I imagine at Halloween Horror Nights, like, yeah, they do pace it, but you got to think so many people are trying to go through at once, so there would be other people, that
Right.
Just whatever. It doesn't affect anything. It's just kind of goofy.
All right, let's get into our scoring. So first off, we have story. What do you think, Zombie Cap?
Really fun story. Very simple, but just a good idea of where to set a slasher movie. So for story, to be honest, being that none of the characters I get too attached to, I liked the boyfriend, who is unfortunately the first person to die, and then the main girl, she's a pretty cool. I really like the actress who's the punk girl. I can't think of her name right
can't
now.
either.
She's in the Scream TV show, and I like that show. She does a good job, but it's hard to really say. But
This movie was definitely the hardest to score.
yeah, like, I'd maybe give it a 7, just because it's like, it's good, but there's nothing crazy. It's a slasher.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. A 7 for me as well in terms of story. So that's 7 for story, everybody, for people keeping tally. Let's move on to characters. I'm gonna be honest. I gave them a 5. I don't think that there's anything that stands out, really. Like I said, I don't even remember the main character's name. And I mean, I guess in true slasher form, there's some that I remember, like, you know, everybody knows Laurie Strode. But,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a little different.
this is not Halloween.
Or even like Cindy Prescott or Sienna from Terrifier.
Right. So
on.
I'm giving characters a 5. I have nothing else to add.
Yeah, they're very just basic, average, cookie cutter.
They're good characters. I like them. They're funny.
They're just there to progress the story, so
Right.
that they get a 5. Like, there's nothing in depth about them really, besides them trying to throw in some emotion of, oh, we're going to Spain. It's like,
All right.
like, just very bland.
So that's a 5 for characters. Completely average. Moving on to antagonist. I like the antagonist.
Yeah, he's cool.
What do you think?
I'd probably give him a 7, just because, once again, they're not breaking the formula at all with this movie, which is fine, completely fine. I love
Right.
it. But we don't learn anything about him outside of the ending of the movie being like he just gets his kicks off of this. So
Which
it's
is my
like,
favorite part of his character.
yeah, and that's cool because it's kind of like The Strangers, but it's like I feel like The Strangers have more just build up personnel, I guess. But I don't. Yeah, probably just a 7, because it's like, man with weapon hurt teenager.
Yeah, that teenager that is dickhead,
Yeah.
pretty much.
But he is cool though. Like, his mask is badass. He seems pretty strong. Like,
I love the fact that we never figure out his motivation. He doesn't have a reason.
Yeah.
It's no rhyme or reason. It's just it is. And I love that. So I'm also going to give him a 7. He's nothing to write home about, but I love him just because
there's
like
just movies that have executed that better, like the original Strangers.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
I understand
it's
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's a 7 for antagonist. Humor, that I think is the star of the show. With
Yeah.
this movie, I gave humor a 7.
Like, I don't die laughing. It gets some chuckles out of me. I'd say like a 6. Like, mainly those points coming from Tony Todd's scenes alone, and getting to see like some of the cool like costume effects doing cool stuff to scare people. It's like, that's so badass. But yeah, like, I wasn't dying laughing, but it was just like, yeah,
Okay, so that's a 6.5 for humor. Scariness, it's a slasher movie. I'm numb to slasher movies at this point.
It's more nowadays when we watch slashers, it's like, was there standout moments? Like the scene where she was left alone in the cart and he's getting closer. That scared me. That was pretty good.
So while we may not feel fear, it's like we can appreciate the setup.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't give it more than a 6. That's not a bad thing. I'm not scared at all by slashers anymore. And that's not to take away from the movie, because it is definitely, it's a popcorn Halloween film. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's different when you're watching something like Halloween, where there is in-depth characters and there is like reason to be scared and like suspenseful. This is for pure fun, just slasher movie. This is like you just said, it's a great popcorn. Turn it on Halloween, decorating the house, whatever. I'd probably also give it a 6.
All right. That's a 6 for scariness. Now, last but certainly not least, we are going to cover our last category, which is experience, how we felt about the movie as a whole.
This is where I feel like I'll get to give it its actual praises, because I love this movie. I'd give it an 8 because it's genuinely one of those movies. Nothing else is on. I'll pop on Hellfest. Why not? I'd fall asleep to this movie. I'd be like, yeah, I'll throw on Hellfest. I'll fall asleep.
I totally agree with you. I give it an 8. I think that of course, it capitalizes off of the foundational structures of slasher movies, but it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. And I feel like that's something that is so missing in our generation of slasher movies.
It's like, I get people were tired of it, but it's like, it's refreshing every now and then just to be like, cool slasher.
I love a
set
true
inside of a theme park. That's awesome.
I love a true return to form.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just a good time from beginning to end. I definitely, if you ever want to just watch a good movie, just put it on, man. Like if you like slasher movies, you'll love this movie.
Cool kills, cool antagonists, cool setting. And then,
I can also honestly say that the removing of the whole, there are horny teens in this movie, but like the whole removing of like the dickhead stereotype, like I feel like there are dickheads, but they're not like so overbearing.
Yeah.
It really brings like I may not care about these characters, but at the same time, like they seem like cool enough people, So yeah, that's an 8 for experience. That's the quickest we've ever went through a score. There's not much else but to just put Horror Havoc to bed. So without further ado, let's do some cleanup. We do have an Instagram, so if you want to give us a follow and go look at all of our real world shenanigans that we get up to on a weekly basis as friends, head over there at the Horror Den channel and give us a follow. We also have a Patreon.
Yes, if you'd like to subscribe to our Patreon, you can for as low as $5 a month to have your name thrown up just like this. All funds go right back into the channel for equipment that is much needed, as we all work full-time jobs, and just we have to have time constraints for stuff like this, so any help towards us is very appreciated.
Well, now that Horror Havoc is closing its doors for the first time, we will hopefully be back next year doing the same thing.
Yep.
But we will be returning back to one video a week. So I hope that everybody has enjoyed their Halloween season. I hope they got their spooks in early. I hope that you're enjoying your Halloween wherever you are, as it is my favorite holiday. So I hope that you just get that little bit of spook just coming your way. Hope everybody's doing good out there. But more than anything, stay spooky out there.